Oh boy, somebody start up the train, because now we are heading over to Speculation Station, baby. It is that time of the year where the Montreal Canadiens have fallen so far out of the playoff race. We're still watching the games, we're still paying attention for the young guys to do well, but in the back of our minds, we're all kinda thinking about the future. We're thinking about the Canadiens losing games and potentially drafting Macklin Celebrini first overall. We may even be thinking about whether or not the Canadiens can contend for a wildcard race next season. And if the Canadiens wanted to do that, would it not be appropriate to have this conversation as well? Because when it comes to Josh Wegman writing on thescore.com, you had yourselves an article published by him 3 days ago talking about the off-season look ahead, how the Habs can keep the rebuild on the right track. This is a very simple article. It goes over a bunch of Montreal Canadiens things that the writer Wegman thinks the Habs should do. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and see what the rest of this article has to say, but I wanted to focus on one of the divided segments of this piece because it goes over into some speculation, it talks about some names. Hey, at the end of the day, I like talking about things that people like to talk about. That's kind of what my channel was built upon. So when it comes to some of the suggested targets that Wegman throws out there that the Montreal Canadiens could potentially see value in the 2024 offseason, I wanted to explore these names, especially since one of them happens to be on my third favorite team, the Boston Bruins. No, just kidding, it's the Red Wings. So let's go out there and read what the article has to say. One of the points that Wegman writes in regards to the Montreal Canadiens' 2024 offseason plans is the idea that the Habs should make a modest UFA splash. Just because the Canadiens should still have an eye for the future does not mean they shouldn't poke around on the UFA market. While spending big for veterans entering the back nine of their careers would be unwise, Montreal could still target UFAs on the younger side who may still have their best hockey ahead of them. We've identified 3 such players: Jake DeBrusk of the Boston Bruins, Warren Foegele of the Edmonton Oilers, and Daniil Sprong of the Red Wings. All 3 are 27 years old and could fill a role as a middle six winger for the Habs. DeBrusk has been streaky in his 7-year career, but he brings 30-goal potential at his best and when he's playing with an edge. Foegele possesses a less offensive upside, but he's a tireless worker and a responsible two-way player. While Sprong has defensive deficiencies, he continues to produce eye-popping offensive numbers despite a limited bottom 6 role. There are also a handful of RFAs every offseason who could get tendered and become UFAs at a young age, which could create another pool of players for the Habs to target. So let's talk about each of these 3 names here, starting out with the most obvious treachery of the bunch, Jake DeBrusk of the Boston Bruins. Now, it's very rare to see players share ties between the Bruins and the Canadiens. I'm honestly kind of stumped to think about when it happened last. Maybe if anybody wants to correct me in the comments, when was the last time we had a Bruin who was a former Hab, or vice versa? Doesn't even matter how many games played. It's just, anybody who happened to have been there. I cannot think of anybody off the top of my head, maybe aside from like Jacques Plante, but that was ages ago. Yeah, I only know that because of the Hockey Ultimate Team Legends cards that were given out a few years ago. But either way, when it comes to Jake DeBrusk, he is, of course, the son of Louis DeBrusk, 27 years old, decently sized, 6 feet, 196-pound left-handed left winger, signed till the end of this season, making $4 million a year. DeBrusk has 39 points in 70 games played, and has maxed out at a career high of 50 points, which he had accomplished last year. He also had multiple 25-plus goal seasons. This year he is on pace for 21. And realistically, when you talk about DeBrusk and the profile he brings, obviously last year was like the best year he ever had. 50 points in 64 games played, so just under a point per game. Very good stuff out of Jake DeBrusk. This season he did fall back a little bit, but he's still all right, all things considered. But the idea of DeBrusk being some sort of an option for Montreal, I don't really know if this would be the right kind of a fit here, mostly because that 1 year that he had that was really bad, it kind of scares me. Like, unfortunately, that 2020-2021 season where DeBrusk had 14 points in 41 games, it's like the only season he's had lately that was under 30 points. but it's such a bad year on his resume that I was never able to personally shake off that thing where it's like, yeah, Jake DeBrusk had this hot and cold career and he has been inconsistent, and would he really be interested in signing a contract with the Montreal team? Could the Canadiens afford a guy who is that inconsistent? But to be honest, I mean, he has had back-to-back, let's just say, 40-point seasons the past few years, so maybe there's a reasonable expectation that he could be able to do that with the Canadiens, but at the same time, I mean, the Boston Bruins have such a good way of finding offense out of the rest of their lineup, even without Bergeron and Krejci, that you think about it, okay, there are a lot of guys, Trent Frederick, JVR, Morgan Geekie, who have been producing solid points, but if Jake DeBrusk goes over to Montreal and he has to play with a Josh Anderson or a Ylonen or whatever, like, is he going to be able to produce numbers in that same capacity? I'm not too sure. Meanwhile, if you go over to the other guys, Daniel Sprong is a really interesting name because he has been able to produce with some of the lowest-tiered players in the Detroit Red Wings lineup. Now, that's not to disrespect the Austin Czarniks or the Joe Velenos or the Fabris or the Fishers, but, like, the fact that Sprong is still able to get 40 points in 68 games played, despite the fact that he's been playing mostly in a bottom-six role, kind of speaks volumes to his overall profile. He doesn't have the best defensive stats, the article nailed that, the guy is pretty much nothing defensively, but his offense, his shooting ability, it's all so good, especially for a bottom-six caliber player. So if the Montreal Canadiens really wanted to capitalize on that, it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. Sprong could be due for a raise because he's making $2 million a year at 27 years old, but he's right in that area where he's got 40 points in 68 games played. He's on pace for about 50 if he played the full year. That's a really good season out of a guy who just broke out last year with the Seattle Kraken, getting 46 points over there. So for Spronger, there's a lot of value here, and I think a lot of Red Wings fans have acknowledged that. It's sort of an underlying idea where it's like, yeah, we probably could or should re-sign Daniel Sprong, right, CVY? Right, Stevie Y? Do it! And, yeah, it's a thing. We don't know if it's going to happen yet. Maybe by the time this video is uploaded and posted onto YouTube, there will already be a contract extension. Who really knows? But this is a very good idea. If it's out of the three guys here for the Canadiens to sign, I'd like Sprong the most. And the third guy that is talked about here, Warren Foegele, unfortunately, I just don't really think that he's, like, too much of a needle mover for the Canadiens. He's 27 years old, making $2.75 million until the end of this season, and look, Foegele has had some pretty good production as well. He's the lowest producing guy out of these three with 35 points in 69 games played. But when it comes to Foegele, he brings a lot of intangibles. He brings a lot of extra two-way defensively minded qualities to his game. So there definitely is value there. It's just for Foegele and what it is that he's normally been able to bring, he never really broke out as a quote-unquote point scorer until this year, and playing on an Oilers squad that is one of the most productive goal teams in the NHL all season probably makes it a tad easier for that. And in my opinion, the Canadiens have enough guys that are progressive two-way defensive guys that can do some pretty good things in their own zone and not really provide much offense anywhere else. Like, you talk about the sea of mid, you talk about the Dvoraks, you talk about the Pizzettas, I guess you could say. Raphael Harvey-Pinard is starting to enter that territory. There are a lot of guys who can fit into the lineup, not necessarily because of their super high point production. And for Warren Foegele, I feel like he's going over to a team in Montreal that just has a lot of those guys already. So, is that really his fault? Probably not, but I still think it would be more valuable for the Canadiens to try to test the waters with somebody who's more offensively capable. The Jake Evanses and the Brendan Gallaghers, these guys will get you some points. These guys will do some good things out there in the middle to bottom six, but what more do they bring? I feel like Warren Foegele plays more into that kind of role rather than what a Daniel Sprong could be, which is a little bit less responsible defensively, but he'll probably score a lot more goals. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about these three guys, Warren Foegele, Jake DeBrusk, and Daniel Sprong, as to whether or not these three could be legitimate Montreal Canadiens targets heading into the 2023-2024 NHL off-season. And if you're a fan of the Bruins, the Oilers, or the Red Wings, what are your thoughts on your guys being targeted like this? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do you want tooth and nail to be fought for when it comes to you guys re-signing these guys? Or would you just let him go to the Wolves and be like, okay, yeah, Montreal could take him. It's yours. Thoughts in the comment section below about these guys and these teams and their situations. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.